When I was about 3.5, we had an old toy ukulele that was my mom's. I would make bows out of Tinker Toys. I would play the ukulele violin with a Tinker Toy bow. Make my brother play the guitar with a Tinker Toy bow like it was a cello. And after a year or a year and a half of that, my parents finally decided I was serious enough, got me a 10th size violin, and found a teacher for me. I guess that's where that all started. I think the first woodworking project I did was when I was probably about 4.5. My parents helped me make a pair of stilts. I wanted to do more wood carving, making little tiny sculptures out of scraps of cedar. And I did that probably till I was 8. When I was 14, I spent quite a bit of time at my grandma's friend's house who had a woodworking shop. I was bored, so I decided to make a violin. And I didn't know how to make a violin. My dad arranged for me to go take it to the violin shop that I went to. So I walked into the door with this violin-shaped object, which wasn't playable, it wasn't structurally sound, but I had something I had made. When my dad came back a couple hours later, I had started a set of templates for a violin. I started spending my Saturday afternoons at the shop. It immediately became the highlight of my life.
I met Jordan in 2013. He was visiting my shop. He was looking to go to the violin making school here in Salt Lake City, and I encouraged him to do so. And I also mentioned that, if he wanted to come by my shop on the side, I would show him some things that maybe they wouldn't teach you in the school.
I was diagnosed with Asperger's when I was 14. To be around violins and be around music and be able to do something with my hands, it gave me a chance to kind of escape from everything. I moved to Salt Lake City about a month after I was 18 and started school at the beginning of January. It wasn't a good situation for me. It felt like I was repeating the previous 3 years. I didn't know how to function in a classroom. I didn't know how to function by myself in the city. It was incredibly discouraging, and I was ready to do something else. And I went home for the summer, and I went back to Indianapolis Violins. And that year, the VSA convention and competition was held in conjunction with the IVCI competition in Indianapolis. It was an incredible experience for me, and I realized, no, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to find a way to do it.
I saw Jordan again in 2014 at the VSA competition. I saw his violin, and I liked it a lot, and I just really enjoyed Jordan's personality. I knew we were a good match for each other, so I asked if he would come over and do some work at my shop. We spent 1.5 years together. I taught him the way I was taught. You learn to sharpen your tools. It's the most important thing, and I know how to sharpen my tools.
For the third time, I was back at square one, but he was able to show me why I was doing what I was doing, which wasn't something I had really been aware of, and it gave me a foundation that I hadn't had before. John was, if not a fun mentor, exactly the mentor I needed. It was the hardest part of my day, but it was also the best part of my day.
And the woodworking that I do is just very deliberate. Everything has a reason. Maybe things were a little difficult sometimes, but we had just had such a good personality match. Jordan, he's just super inquisitive, very driven, very enthusiastic, and he was really developing his own ideas and concepts. He started bringing me violins, and I was like, these are really good. The varnish was really nice, and the woodwork was authentic and deliberate and has really nice character. There's just something fun to look at.
I was working for John during the day, and then I was building violins in the back room of the house at night as quietly as I could so my roommates wouldn't wake up and yell at me. At a certain point, I couldn't live there and I couldn't work there, and I felt like I had to separate my life and my work because they were the same thing at that point. My friend Rob called me out of the blue and said, "Hey, I'm moving back to Salt Lake City. I need a shop to work in. Do you want to help me set up a shop?" And I said, sure.
I think it was April 2016. One of my students called me up. He had just tried one of Jordan's violins. And he said, Monty, you got to try this. So I looked him up on the internet, looked up his website. I was really impressed by the varnish. And then I looked at the arching, and the pictures on his website are very clear. Called Jordan up and I said, I can be there pretty early in the morning. He had a violin there for me to try. I tried it and I just couldn't put it down. It was so warm and full, focused. It was just everything that I've always wanted in a violin. He kept saying, I'm not sure this is the right one for you, and I really wanted it, so I went ahead and said, I'm taking it. But he said, I probably have one that's going to be perfect for you. It's coming in a week. So I got a chance to try that one as well, and that's the keeper. That's the one that I kept.
I've spent a lot of time in violin shops in my life. So this shop is my attempt to create the shop that I've always dreamed. Create a shop where you walk in the door and the world disappears. You're here to experience the violin or the bow, or you're here as a maker to experience the shop and a place to work. One of the things the violin industry struggles with the most is who we're doing our work for. Part of that is that we try and think of ourselves as artists. In reality, violin making isn't art. It's very advanced tool making for artists. We're not the ones doing art, we're the ones making tools for the violinists who are the artists. You can end up with a beautiful violin, but it might not be a good violin because it's a piece of art, that's not a tool. And they can have style to them, in some cases almost be pieces of sculptures, but at the end of the day, violins are tools. And if you're not able to make the tool, it's not a good violin.
You don't really go in and tell Jordan how to make a violin. What you do is you go play for him, because he is quite a player. And he looks at your bow arm, he looks at how you make sound, how you produce it. He's already got everything figured out. I'm gonna use this wood, I'm gonna do that one. Jordan's able to really match what he hears with what he's making and what he thinks these people need. Not necessarily what they want, but what they need. And then usually when they get their violins, they're like, oh, that's exactly what I wanted. So he really is able to make different kinds of violins for different types of players.
In a lot of ways, wood and violins and music make sense to me in a way that people don't make sense to me. Because of that, violins are sort of my outlet for everything. And I feel like that's why I make violins the way I do. When I can't communicate, the best alternative I have is to make a violin that someone else can use to communicate with people.